My name is Peter, I'm a recovered alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. And again, thank the group for having me. It's week 11. We got one more week, and we'll see where God takes us. June 23rd, 1988 was my separation from alcohol. And I'm very grateful for that gift the longer I'm sober. And part of it is just the gratitude God has instilled in me. And the desire, the passion to know my God, to be a member in good standing in Alcoholics Anonymous. June 23rd, 1988, my separation from alcohol. God willing, for the last time, I was not a member in good standing in Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew little about Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew less about God. I knew nothing about the steps. Just a lot of opinions that I had and other people's opinions. And I balked many times because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And we can get, as I did, so sick that we just get used to pain. And we get used to turmoil. And we get used to controversy. And it's what we know. And the idea of breaking out of that and getting into a new lane, trying something new, can be overwhelming. And there's a part of me, I remember back then, that I didn't really feel I was worthy or even deserved any kind of goodness to come to me based on what I had done with the past. And it was imperative that little by slowly, via the 12 steps, which would take me to God, that I reconcile my past, have forgiveness to my past and the people in it, and somewhere in there have forgiveness for me. That I did bad things and I'm not a good guy. But there was a peace in us. There's a peace in us that is divine. And that's what we need to reignite. I was sharing with some men earlier. We talk about finding the great reality deep down within us, that God is within us. And that's the search to go in order to go out. But the consideration I was given, and I offer this to some folks today, can we find ourselves in God? This God who's all-loving, all-powerful, omnipotent, all-merciful, constant, consistent, pristine, something you can't even grasp with your mind, love beyond what we can actually comprehend. Can I find me in that? And the first answer is absolutely not. I don't even deserve to get close to that based on what I've done. The reality is there's a piece of me in this great power. And the only way I can see that and then eventually experience it is experiencing the death of self. In order to experience any kind of freedom in my life, I need to embrace change. And in order for me to embrace change, I need to have experienced some suffering. And we all have the walk of pain, if you will, the suffering. We carry the cross. Willingly and joyfully carry that cross. But every one of us have that pain and suffering that was the catalyst to embrace change and eventually step into freedom. And without any kind of suffering, why would I change? Why do I even need God? If I come into Alcoholics Anonymous and everything is fabulous, what am I doing here? If drinking hasn't brought me to the depths of despair or any other substance that brought me to the depths of despair where I've come to the realization that on my own power I am totally screwed, then why do I need to embrace this huge change and transformation that is about to happen? The transformation that I've seen happen in other people. So they're suffering. And what I've come to find out, almost 29 years sober now, thank the good Lord, is that the suffering is more pruning of the tree. It isn't suffering because I'm acting out. It isn't suffering that because of my willful ways. It isn't suffering because I'm the one causing the controversy. It is just the walk. And I drop everything and pick up my cross and walk. And I lay my troubles at my God's feet. I lay my sinfulness at his feet. In fact, some days the best thing I can give my God, the only thing I'm capable of giving my God, is my sinfulness. And on my own power, that's what I create and that's what I cause. Intentionally, unintentionally. So this walk with God, and that's what I call it, it's a walk. It's a walk with God. Because there's no destination. I don't get to God and say, okay, I'm good, cash my chips in. It is a walk through eternity, actually. But this walk while I'm here and God's pumping life into me, it's my walk with my Creator, which was completely foreign to me prior to Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, I was leery of men who talked about a walk with God, who talked about a spiritual walk, who talked about being enlightened, and we have enlightened people in Alcoholics Anonymous. We do have gurus in AA, and I know some of the folks in AA would hang me from the highest post for saying that. I don't care. We have gurus in Alcoholics Anonymous, enlightened men and women, and we know who they are. And they don't say a word, and we know it. They just walk into a room, and you just notice something about the walk. The deportment shouts that they're men and women who breathe God. So in 1988, in June of 1988, I come into treatment, and for the 7th time, and I'm in serious trouble. Physically serious trouble. As far as what was up here was scrambled eggs. I had nothing but contempt and anger for a lot of things and a lot of people. And the number one person on the hit parade for me was my dad, who was like my closest friend in the world. And we disagree on a lot of things. My dad is not old school. He's got 200 AD ideas sometimes. Really old school. And he has a way of doing things. And he's the alpha male. I mean, if you look in a dictionary on the alpha male, you will see a picture of my old man. And I'm kind of not like that. I can be. So how do we join? How do two different walks join? And when I got into treatment in 1988, I just seething with anger over a lot of things, pointing fingers, calling people hypocrites. And what this God, this merciful God has done, and the reason why I can talk about this, experientially talk about what it's like living in the world of the Spirit, the effects produced by living in the world of the Spirit. I can give you a talk on mechanics. A lot of people can. But my teachers always said, tell a story with the mechanics. What comes out of working with step 11? God doesn't want me to talk. Sometimes silence does make more sense. Actually, I was told when it comes to God, silence is the best thing I can do. I'm losing John. You got it? Okay. I was doing something a couple of months ago, this Christian recovery thing, and there were about 6,000 speakers before me. The PA system worked right. I got up there, the whole thing went dead for an hour. I blame Russell. So I'm chopping wood and carrying wood and going through the steps, and I get incredibly excited and passionate and dedicated to be disciplined by the spiritual principles in the book. And the effects produced by that was relationships got better. That doesn't mean everyone likes me, but relationships got better. The quality of my life improved. There was faith, there was dependence, there was courage, there was endurance, a lot of things that I always lacked. And in relationships getting better, little by slowly, by working with a life, and I mean this, a life of prayer meditation, and forgive me for sounding so pretentious, I don't talk about prayer meditation, then I leave the podium and don't do it. I have a life of prayer meditation and a nightly review and a sponsor, a prayer meditation life of 3 times a day. I sit in meditation, not looking for the big bang, but it's just an honoring of my God and getting still and waiting for direction, and my prayer one of surrender. And I do inventory at night, part of our 11 step. I have volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes of inventory over the years. And I just can't even fathom going through this journey in AA without writing inventory and then discussing it with someone. So I do this stuff, and the pruning of the tree happens, all the while carrying the cross of me. And this man, my dad, who I had a lot of contempt and anger to, and I felt for years he had the same towards me. Little by little, we start to reconcile and reconcile and reconcile. Well, here's what God did for me. Sunday, my dad and his wife came over. Mary and I, we all had dinner together. And I lost my mom when I was 14. My dad lost a wife when he was in his early 30s and was stuck with 3 boys to raise. And put my mom in and out of a million institutions, went through a bunch of suicide attempts. And it was just really a bad scene. And I can't even fathom what it's like being in your early 30s, having 3 boys, and your wife is in and out of institutions and cutting her wrist and overdosing, and it just goes on and on and on and on and disappearing for days at a time and winding up in emergency rooms. I can't even fathom that. I can never see that. I just saw how come I'm not getting attention and how come he's not being nice to me. Well, he deserved to be grouchy a few days. So God has allowed this relationship to kind of rekindle. Well, on Sunday, talking to my dad, he has not ever gotten free of my mom passing. He's been in pain since 1974. And he's actually walked into a psychiatrist's office and said they need a psychiatrist more than I do. And they wanted to medicate him, and he almost hit the doctor because he doesn't believe in drugs. And he went to a few therapists and didn't think it was working, and he would not walk into church, and here he is. Well, recently he went back to this doctor to talk. So on Sunday, we were sitting outside on the terrace after dinner, and my dad started to talk. And the great thing here is, because of what God has done for me, has allowed my dad to experience some sort of trustworthiness in me and comfortability to unload. There was a time where that was not going to happen. And he began. And I remember turning to my dad. I made a prayer as he's talking. I turned to my dad and I says, "Can I speak frank?" And he says, "Yeah, just talk to me." And I began to do all the things that I do with clients for many years now, and the things I do with the men I sponsor and the people who are close to me. And I shared what I would share to anyone. And my dad stopped. And this thing came over him. He began to weep. And I paused. He says, "No, keep going." And so I continued, and I pushed. And I shared the perceptions of my mom. Like I said, let's step out of the box. Let me just look at her as this woman who's extreme bipolar. Probably a borderline personality from all the things I've learned now. Unmedicated. Bipolar, borderline personality, throw a serious drinking problem, alcoholic, and a pill problem, addicted to pills on top of that. The autopsy had her loaded up with all sorts of narcotics. I mean, just enough to kill a horse. So you have this. And I went to talk to him about the problem he was facing, that no human power could fix this. And I talked to him about his condition. I got a call from my dad today. And my dad called me to thank me. He says, "I even called your brother to tell him what I had done for him Sunday afternoon." I was just being a son, a caring son. And he says, "It's the first time." I don't know why God's given me this, but the first time in so many years that I slept 8 hours last night. And I'm up and I'm about today. And I thought about what you said. And what he was trying to say in his very street way, how blind I had been to me. And I can hear the excitement in his voice. He turns 80 in November. He was excited about his life again. In a simple fireside talk, if you will, a la Bill sitting with Dr. Bob. 5-hour talk changed the world. This was about a half hour. And I just gave him from my gut everything. And the Spirit just did what the Spirit does. Now, I could have just people pleased. I could have just coddled them. I could have been real sheepish. But Spirit says, "Here's the opening. Go in. I got you." And to hear the excitement and the peace that finally I'm listening to my dad experience. He's been troubled with this, it seems like forever. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. Now, some of us sitting here say, "Well, what's the big deal?" To me, it's monumental. And I was talking to him, not trying to change him. I wasn't trying to get kudos of, "Look, I'm a guru now, Dad, I'm in AA." It was just what we do. Talk about God to the sick and suffering. Talk about our experience. No preaching, no lecturing. An honest assessment, because there's no substitute for the truth. His suffering brought him to a place of change, and change into, at least today, and Sunday of freedom, perhaps for the first time. That's what we get to do. And thank the good Lord, because of the way He's disciplined me to a spiritual life, there was an intuitive voice that I could hear. And the words, not to worry about the words you speak, the Father will give them to you, it says in another book. I didn't think about how I'm going to do this. I said, God, just give me words like when I do this. I have no idea where we're going with this. Every week I do. I don't know what's coming out. But I trust in my Heavenly Father to feed me. And He does. And that's what happened in that little talk with my dad. Hearing him on the phone, I mean, it changed my day. Even though the events were bumpy today at work, there was an inner stillness that my old man was relaxed. He was joyful. He was excited. And I don't know what it's like to turn 80 and looking at your own mortality, but that was lingering with him. And we talked about that as well. And I talked about why are we mourning while we're alive? We're alive. We might be here for another day. I might be here for another day. I told him I might go tomorrow. But while we're here, let's have some fun. Let's work on the dash. Remember the dash story? What are we doing about the dash? So this God has done so many things for me. Indeed, the miraculous, great words out of the big book, including the experiences I've had, experiences plural, with the practice of meditation, that I thought meditation was something I had to join a monastery. And I find the monastery is right here. The monastery is going into Publix. The monastery is going to work. The monastery is driving in my car. I don't need to go to a monastery to experience the monastery. The life of a mystic takes place while I'm chopping wood and carrying water out there in all my affairs. I don't need to go somewhere, because when those people do that, that is a calling. Those people who go to monasteries, that is a calling, like a priest into priesthood. That is a calling. Well, we've been called here. And if God wanted one of us there, we'd leave here and go there too. And it would be perfect. It would be divine. But I don't need to go to some hill. The chapel on top of a hill. I can visit those places. But God has me in the trenches here. That's my monastery. And I can live the life of a mystic. We can live the life of a mystic doing that. My job is to practice fidelity to God and no other gods. That I'm all in a commitment, a way of living. It's a commitment for life to this God. When we're called, it's not so much of a hard job. How can I not do that? How can I not serve my God? And one of the greatest ways to experience this God that we all talk about is by being a servant. By serving, whether I'm putting chairs in place or putting the chairs away, I'm opening a meal, I'm making coffee, or the number one service, getting with the drunk who doesn't want to hear the message and sitting down and listening to him how much he doesn't want to hear the message and just being an ear. Because he can talk to you now without you doing this. Because everyone else out there is going to do this. I know if my God walked in this room, he'd sit down and I would just keep going and going and going. He'll just keep listening and listening and listening. Right? Then he'd probably say, wow, you're really screwed up. I can't handle this. Call in St. Peter. He'll probably say, I got to go to lunch. I'll be back later. But sometimes that's what it is. A life of service. So, in step 10, it says we've entered the world of the Spirit. And that is a result of the work in the first 9 steps where we clear out self. We get us out of the way, or most of us out of the way. And we do that in 4 and 5. We flush out a whole bunch of us. And we begin to experience the death of self. And we begin to experience the successful living. We begin to have different perceptions and conceptions about everything as we disclose, self-disclosure to someone else, because we become more transparent. And the transparency isn't only me to you, but it's from here to here, the longest distance in the world. There's less blocking me. There's one thing that happens, though. It usually goes from here to here. Now it's going from here up to here. We're given this new mind because we're getting information from the Spirit, and we're listening to it. And we're following its directions. Last week we talked about, struggle. Struggle is totally an illusion that I'm living in. When I know what the answer is to a problem and I claim I'm struggling, it is an illusion. I don't want to do the answer. I don't want to do the walk to get the answer. So I cop out and say, well, I'm struggling, and it satisfies the ego. And God has not given up. God's going to keep pulling. And the more I pull back, more struggle. It's just delusion. We all know about the steps. We all know about the big book. We all know about religious communities. We all heard about God. We all know about 12-step fellowships. What's the struggle? It means I don't want to get better, so I'm struggling. Enter the world of the Spirit. As I flush out self, we begin to experience a new dimension of existence, one we never experienced before. And I will tell you, every time I go through the work and we re-enter the world of the Spirit or get to a new dimension of existence, it is all new again. It is all new again. I enter the world of the Spirit. I'm working with 10 and 11 disciplines, growing in understanding and effectiveness, enhancing this godly experience. And then I go through the work again, and I enter again lighter and cleaner. It's new again. And the clarity I had last year is different than I have this year. My sponsor asked me a question last night. He says, look at yourself a year ago and now. Have you experienced growth? Have you experienced more ease and comfort? Have you experienced more freedom? I said, absolutely. Just go back a year before that and go back to your first year. How much freedom, and joy, and experiences have you had with God compared to the first day you got in here? The scale looks like this. And during the last 28 years, there have been times of skepticism and doubt that God's not going to show up. How am I going to get out of this one? And I've always landed on my feet. I was sharing with some guys today that sometimes life is, when you go to the gym, the one more rep. Sometimes life is like that one more, if you're a runner, one more block. I can't do it. It's too heavy. I don't have the strength. And everyone's going, just one more, just one more, just one. That's life. And sometimes it hurts. And what happens, you get it, and you complete it, and you're better for it. And very often, we don't complete it, but in the effort, we succeed in doing, we succeed. So I'm trying to push this last rep out. I just can't do it. And they take it off me and put it back on the rack. I'm better for doing that than quitting. Can't do it. I'm not doing it. I've accomplished nothing. That's sometimes life, which is problematic. And many of us know life has been unfair. Life is unfair many times. It doesn't make sense very often. Sometimes things get dropped in our lap. And what did I do to deserve this? Nothing. But just God knows your shoulders are that wide. And the only way I have the endurance and the know-how to walk through that is through a surrender. God, show me what to do. Please don't forsake me now. And He never will. It's me who's moving. Because I go right back into, I know what I got to do. No, I don't. I really don't. I don't know how, and I'm not being facetious. I do this a lot. I travel the globe. I get invited to do things like this. I don't know how I do this. Because if you know me privately, I'm pretty reserved. I'm not the guy in the middle of the room cracking jokes, dancing on top of the table. That is not me. I'd rather just sit in the back. Whenever I go to a meeting, you usually find me in the back row. Quiet, in the back. And I don't feel like the most confident guy in the world to go give talks. And sometimes when they call me for conferences, I'm like, you got the right guy. But I go. And God says, I picked you, now go. I'll give you the words. And that's how I do this. That's why, especially the day I'm going to do these things, I do like no reading. I don't want to have anything in the way. I meditate, I get quiet, I fast for a few hours. I need to be completely empty, stripped of everything. I don't want to show up with me. You don't want me to show up here. I don't want me around. I just want the Spirit that's in me, the same one that's in you, to be part of this meeting tonight. And that's how this goes for me. There's something about doing these things. I know some folks like to do it as a popularity contest. I'm out there a lot. There's a lot of speakers who they live for this. There's a popularity contest. I treat this with dignity. You invited me here. I need to give you back the respect and keep this very important. It's paramount today to bring you a meeting because I'm not here for me. I can sit in the back and have a meeting. My life is none of my business, and my recovery is not even for me anymore. God keeps me sober now. I just surrendered and do all the disciplines. He's keeping me sober. My recovery, our recovery after a while is not even for us. It's about bearing witness for the first person who can't find their way home, who is lost, or who's in AA and just can't click. They need to look to someone. Somebody has to bear witness for this power. Someone has to bear witness for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not going to be the newcomer all the time. And shame on me if I'm old-timey trying to get gratitude off a newcomer who's struggling. I've missed the whole show. I should just have gratitude for being upright, sucking air, and sober. And a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why Jerry said no chanting. We do a disservice to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not a rah-rah rally. It's Alcoholics Anonymous. And when we started our traditions and our history, there was no chanting. We treat it as sacred. The big book is sacred, like our Bible. We don't go to church and start chanting how it works or the Lord's Prayer while the priest or the pastor is doing it. You respect, you give it reverence because it deserves reverence. And so we listen because while I'm talking, I can't listen. It's more busy work. Let's chant so I don't have to listen. Jerry said it best. He sits there and listens. Suddenly, how it works sounds like a song to him. That's the whole goal. The Spirit's getting fed by a simple page and a half of reading. That's Alcoholics Anonymous for me. And that's for me. Other people find a different route. So, my book says I shouldn't be shy in the matter of prayer. The consideration, do I refrain from shouting God from the rooftops at a podium because I may not be liked? Or am I shouting God from the rooftops? Am I talking about God wherever I go? Not forcing it down someone's throat because that can be a disservice. It's attraction, not promotion. But am I free to talk about God from an AA podium or from a sharing floor? Because I deny him here, he might just deny me later on. It says it works if we have the proper attitude to work at it. Step 11, it works, that's a promise. If I have the proper attitude, what is the proper attitude? Honest, open, and willing. Am I still honest and open and willing by the time I get to step 11? Am I still seeking God with the desperation I had when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous? Do I still seek God with desperation when I have a pocket full of money and I'm firing on all cylinders the same way when I have no money and it's falling apart? You know when we call God then? Can I be joyful about this, God? Can I be joyful with God when things aren't going so good? It's easy to be grateful for a banquet. When a banquet is served for me, it's easy to be grateful. Banquet mean the new car, the new relationship, the new money, whatever it is. It's easy to be grateful. When everyone says, way to go, and gives me a lot of attaboys, it's easy to be grateful. Can I be grateful when my belly is empty? Can I be grateful when there's no money in my pocket? Can I just be grateful for the fact that I'm above ground, sucking air, and sober, and I belong to Alcoholics Anonymous? Can I hold on to that? Because the alternative is dead or drunk. Because when those things do come, and God will give them in His way, in His time, the same way He will take them in His way, in His time, suddenly everything feels even better. Because I have gratitude when I'm living in a cubicle in a halfway house with no door and a community bathroom and all I own fits in a duffel bag. And I'm grateful for this. Imagine what happens when I get an apartment and I'm able to buy my own clothes and I'm self-employed. Oh my God. So sometimes God will remove the things that we think are so important to us because it's getting in the way. And we look at God as this punishing God because He took my relationship, He took my money, He took my job, and God's saying, no, I'm trying to save your life. These things are going to get you loaded because they're taking you from me while I'm trying to pursue, to have a relationship with you. It says, when I retire at night, I constructively review my day. This is the inventory. It asks me some questions. It doesn't say if I was resentful. It says, were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do I owe an apology to anyone, an amends? Have I kept something to myself which should be discussed with another person at once? The sins of omission. Now, I'm an alcoholic. I'm great at that. I'll tell you what I want to tell you. Things that are not going to get me into too much trouble. They're not going to have too much vulnerability in my sharing. That's the kind of stuff that leaves plaque on my soul, and I begin to get sick. And I can't even see the sickness growing in me. I need to be transparent. This is why we have sponsors. Someone we can say, here's what I was thinking today. This is what I did today. I'm not proud of it, but here it is. I've already been cleaned. And I do this on paper. I write inventory at night on paper. When I get home, it takes me a few minutes to put my day on paper. It's not a biography. It's not those things, a journal. A journal just gets me real sick. I mean, writing and writing and writing. And by the time you get done writing, boy, I am absolutely wonderful and the world is all screwed up. This is about continuing to take my inventory, even though the world didn't treat me properly today. Where was I resentful? Where was I selfish? Where was I self-seeking? Where was I afraid? Do I owe an apology? Did I keep something to myself? I'm walking around with a lot of sins of omission. And if no one knows about it, I believe it didn't happen. That's a street way of living. And I can't be in the street and be in God's house at the same time. It asked me, was I kind and loving toward all? You answer sometimes no. I was short. I was abrupt. I character assassinated someone in my mind. Inwardly, I did. See, when I go to God, I want him to be kind and loving to me 24/7. But the conditions change when you ask me, have I been kind and loving? And I'll come up with an excuse why I can justify not being kind and loving toward all. I want you to be kind and loving to me 24/7 as well. But when it comes to me, I have my moments, and you have to excuse me for it. What hypocrisy. What step 11 is doing for 10:11 is doing for us in just a few pages has raised the bar from here way up here, where God is. Because I will bring it down immediately. Left to my own devices, the bar will be down here. Just go to a meeting, don't drink, I'm great. No, I'm not. It's got to be up here. It says, after making my review, ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. What could I change? What can I go to God with? What's the solution to where I fell short, where I missed the mark today, where self-reliance took over? How often today did I feed the ego and starve the spirit rather than feeding the spirit and starving the ego? And that doesn't have to be that doesn't have to be a thing that's outwardly done. It can be just within, that I'm feeding the ego and starving the spirit. When I get away from God, when I start practicing infidelity to God, when I start to discern what's right and wrong, when I start to cut corners, when I start to act out, when my language is really improper, I start to step away. And then I get an emotional hangover. The 12 and 12 talks about this, the emotional hangover. I wake up Monday morning with Sunday all over me. Now, if anyone knows me, when I sponsor men or where I work, I can sound like a truck driver. No offense to truck drivers. I have no problem using the most god-awful language. And I'll continue to do that. I have no problem barking when it's warranted. I have no problem doing it. I'll continue to do it. The difference between someone barks and curses, I come from love and compassion. And the thing about compassion, it can be, Fred, cry on my shoulder, I got you. And it can be, hey, Fred, stop the nonsense. It's coming from love. The same way a parent will discipline their child, not to be mean because they love them. That's what God has allowed me to do. And isn't it funny, the byproduct of that, a lot of men get better. A lot of women get better. I get better as well. Because I'm being truthful with them. And that's the thing about living in the world of the Spirit. The margin for error is slim here. And the margin for deceitfulness doesn't exist. You can't do it. It hurts too much to lie to another drunk and just coddle when they need to have a little boot up their rear end. Or give them a boot up the rear end when they need to be coddled. That's dishonesty. It's really all about me. And the world of the Spirit demands that I live according to his way. And somehow God always supplies us with the right answer and the right words. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead before we even go out the door. Meaning, before I get out the door and then pray in the car, while I'm laying in bed, let me think about the 24 hours ahead. It's a whole day, and anything is possible. I remember years ago, I was brand new, and I was going to this, what they called an aftercare group, Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock. And I leave my job, and I tell them, listen, I have to go to this aftercare group. You mind if I leave for now? They said, I'll pay the care fare. Just go. and because I was sober for the first time and I wasn't borrowing money. They said, whatever you're doing up there, just go 5 days a week. And so I'm sitting in group, and this gentleman, Vince Dowling, who's gone home to the Lord, one of my first mentor, really, my first elder in AA. When I met him, he had 30 years sober. And he was one of the few guys that I knew back then with that much time in AA who was a big book guy. There were a lot of don't drink, go to meetings guys then. And he asked me some questions. He says, so what do you do in the morning? Now, old timers set you up all the time. Very man. So what do you do in the morning? And I get dressed, go, well, tell me about your morning. I'm interested. I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And I said, well, I get up, make some coffee, read the newspaper, get dressed, take a shower and get dressed, pray, get my keys, go out the door. He says, let me get this straight. He says, so you get up, do about 4 or 5 things first, then you pray, then you go out the door. I said, yeah. He says, who's preventing you from getting drunk while you're putting your left leg in the pants before you get your right leg in the pants? Who's stopping you from getting drunk? I don't know. He says, so you take over in the morning, so you're in control of your life in sobriety, meaning if you can do prayer on the 4th or 5th errand of the day, that means you're in charge for that hour. You realize an idiot took over your life for 1 hour, and that guy can get you drunk at any minute, meaning you can wake up and walk right out the door and get drunk. And I had to sit with that, because that seemed a little extreme. But as an alcoholic, what I do is drink. That's what I do. I drink. Good day, bad day, middle day, doesn't make, I drink. And here I am, new sobriety. I wake up, I do about 4 or 5 things. Then I decide, okay, I can pray now. Who's preventing me from going out the door at 5 after 6 in the morning? No one. I was given a little bit of grace. I stopped doing that. So when a book says on awakening, and I literally mean this, my eyes open before I get out of bed, I make contact with God. Father, thank you for this day. Please keep me clean and sober today. A little dialogue with God before I go hit my knees and go to the altar. Because I have an altar in my house, a little altar, a space that I've created of grace, of dignity, of integrity. It's a holy place in my house. And many folks who come to my house when I was living in Boca, where I am now, when they walk into this room, they all say, there's something about this room. Kind of like when you walk into a cathedral or a church. You walk in and you can feel that. You can't see anything, but you can feel it. So that's what I do on awakening. And then I go to the altar and I work with prayer. I do this at night. And there's some prayers that are near and dear to me. I think the Lord's Prayer is the most wonderful prayer I've ever heard. I love our 3rd step prayer. Reminding myself, you're going to do with me whatever you want, and I stand ready. There's some prayers I work with, and I offer everything. As a servant, God will go where you want me to go, I'll do what you want me to do, and I'll say what you want me to say. I talk to my carpenter that I trust in you, and I'll do whatever you need me to do today. I stand ready. And that's from the heart. I'll surrender a bunch of things. For me, if I'm not talking surrender, I'm really just petitioning. And I get an opportunity now to listen. And I sit in meditation. I used to read a lot. Had a meditation, 24-hour day for men, daily word, read book, this book, that book, meditation if you're Italian, meditation if you're from Brooklyn, there was nothing in it, meditation, had all these, the Brooklyn guys already, I heard click, it's a joke. So I was getting erotic with that stuff. So what I do now is, I don't read until I'm done with everything. So after my prayer, I go into meditation, and I have a mat. I have an altar with all the things that are close to me and my God, my religion. I have this picture of a cathedral above it. I have some photos. I have a lot of trinkets that AA folks have given me. I'm a Catholic, and I have... I asked the priest about this because they tell me when I have rosary beads, and they tell me when they're old or they break, I'm supposed to do something with them. I says I have probably 50 of them on my altar. He says it's safe there. And I have all these things. I have gongs, I have some candles, I have the incense. but what I do is nothing other than sit in sacred silence. I need to go into darkness to see and silence to hear. And so I sit on this meditation mat with posture, proper posture, and breath. And I wait. And sometimes it's a matter of 15, 20 minutes of just breathing in stillness. And sometimes God will feed, because the ground is fertile enough. Sometimes there's messages in there. Sometimes things will speak to the heart, as Marion says. God will speak to the heart, not to the head. And when God speaks to the heart, he leaves a thumbprint on there that you don't need to write it down because it's like your name, you know it. That's how powerful the message from God is. I don't need to write it down. Anytime God has spoken, I need to write it down. It's just, I can remember it 20 minutes later, I can remember it 10 days later. It's there, like my name. That's the power of this God cutting right through. And sometimes there's information, sometimes questions are answered. Sometimes the riddles to life, the answers are given to us, but not in my time. It happened twice with riddles with my mom. Incredible experience, incredible for me. Life-changing experiences where I can stand before you and tell you, knowing that I am known by my Creator is very real. It's very tangible to me. It's refuge for me. It brings me a stillness and a compassion more for my God, knowing that I'm known by my Creator. That could not happen to me by just going to meetings and not working with these disciplines. One of the prayers I work with is going to God for the willingness. Please give me the willingness to go to any lengths still. Because on my own power, I don't know what would happen to me. I might become lazy and rest on my laurels. My prayer this morning was, Father, please allow me to go to any lengths to get recovered, stay recovered, and to know you. That's every morning. That's just the way it is. I couldn't fathom not doing things like this. And so I sit in meditation. The very first time I sat in meditation, someone taught me the importance of posture and breath. I don't have headphones on. I don't have sunglasses on. I don't have a baseball hat on. The TV is not on. There's nothing going on. And I sit in very comfortable clothes. And it's just me and my God. The interesting thing about going into this place of prayer, this place of meditation, how free do we want to be? And part of getting free, we might go so far into prayer that the idea of God unlocking the shackles around us. I don't go into prayer to recharge my batteries. I get it while I'm doing this. I get it while I'm AAs. I'm not going to prayer to recharge my batteries. What I'm going is praying God unlocks the shackles that are around us that I put there, so I can be of greater service to Him. But sometimes we will go into a part of prayer that many of us don't want to go to because the answer we're going to get or the direction I'm going to get, I may not like. So I'm just going to play it safe. 5 minutes of prayer, 5 minutes of meditation. My ego's satisfied. I tell you, I pray and meditate. I'm off the hook. I'm good. Meanwhile, I have turmoil going on. So I ask God for courage to go in, and I stand ready. And I hope it's not for a long, long time. But when my God says, you need to come home, I'll go home. Because I know I'm going to dine with Him that night, which is the reward. And I'm in no hurry to get there. But I want to go like my grand sponsor did. I'm ready, and closed his eyes and went home. Because he knew where he was going. That's what this is about, by the way. That's what this whole walk is about. Not to become a circuit speaker. God wants to put you up there to speak, you'll do it. Make coffee, you'll do it. Get a job, you'll do it. But all of this is about where we're going. And how am I doing while I'm here? How's the walk look? And so I sit in sacred silence and I wait. And I get up off the mat. And I'm real aware of, let's not fall right back into Pete Marinelli and self-reliance. Let's make this the walk today. Let's walk with God. We just got up off the mat. Whatever needs to be done. I do some chores around the house. I get to spend time with Marion. And what is she doing? Well, again, we're Catholic, so forgive me. I don't want to break a tradition. Rosary beads. She's in prayer. Every morning. So I have a partner on this walk together. How could that happen? I'm a drunken Dauphine who has lived in an abandoned building, and I walk with the woman who worships our God. and we get to have godly talks. And we talk about world of the Spirit. When I'm done with meditation, sometimes I'm inspired to read. I love reading. I gobble up a lot of information. And I try to follow directions in the information. And so I'll sit at my desk, and I have my big book. My desk is stacked with books. I have scripture. Whatever Spirit moves me. Sometimes it doesn't. I'll just do chores and get ready for work. But very often you'll find me in the morning, and sometimes late at night, like last night, I'm sitting with that is my passion, to study, to learn. So when you sit in front of me, I'm on with facts, because that's my job. That's what God put me. That's my job. I work for God. I have a job. I have a career. Thank the good Lord. I love where I work. I love the men I work with. But my real purpose is to serve God in bringing His children home. I'm going to close with something that is very near and dear to me from another book that, for me, always fit. Is part of this reading. Fit step 11. In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, rescue me and deliver me. Turn your ear to save me. Be my rock of refuge, to which I can always go. Give the command to save me, for you are my rock and my fortress. Deliver me, my God, from the hand of the wicked, from the grasp of those who are evil and cruel. For you have been my hope, sovereign Lord, my confidence since my youth. From birth I have relied on you. You brought me forth from my mother's womb. I will ever praise you. I have become a sign to many. You are my strong refuge. My mouth is filled with your praise, declaring your splendor all day long. That's all I got. Peace.